Alright, welcome back to how to build an F-14. I've gone ahead and gotten the inboard panel for the leading edge on the bottom of the wing taped into position, so it's basically ready to be formed. Again, on this one compared to the wingtips, just start here in the center, kind of roll it down into position all the way down and around the leading edge, and then work your way to one tip or one edge of it, and then right back down then to the opposite edge. If you notice, as I did that, little edges here kind of like popped up where it doesn't quite want to conform to it. So what you do, if you kind of roll around the radius of that curve, starting up towards the top, and then working your way down to the apex of the point. It will eventually work its way out, and you'll actually roll those little bends that come up out of it. You may have to anneal it a second time to get it to work. It just takes a little bit of playing around with it to get it to eventually do what you want it to. So it looks like I will have to anneal this one a second time. So again, just take the torch out and heat up that area where we were working it. It didn't really want to conform the way you wanted to. And I'm gonna anneal it down a little bit further from the edge, about half as far as I did the very first time, just to get all that area I worked with the roller to soften up a little bit. Then we'll wait for that to cool off. While we're waiting on that to cool off, I'll bring you over and show you the nose. Here you can see I've got the nose kind of taped off with a lot of body filler on it. Same thing with the actual nose cone. I wasn't really 100% happy with the fit of the nose cone to the fuselage. It was just a little bit larger of a gap than I really like to see. So I just took the nose cone, put it, set there, and I taped off the perimeter of the edge on the nose cone and on the fuselage. Then put the nose cone in place, taped it off so there's a little bit of a gap. I think it's about a 1/16 to 3/32 of an inch. Then I took some body filler and I just filled in that gap that I created. And then right before it was not completely cured, but just you could touch it and just leave your fingerprint, I just took a number 11 X-Acto knife and just went around, and you can see, and it leaves you a nice even gap. That's really a tight fit to it. So now that I've got that done, I'll go through here and I'll kind of take some 80 grit or 150 grit paper right around the edge, knock it back down, and then I'll pull the tape off and just make sure that it's nice and flush. That way you get a really nice tight fit of the nose cone to the fuselage when the actual parts are made up. So our portion here should be nice and cooled off by now. So you get the tripod set back up right, and we'll get back to working on that. Alright, so again, just take the roller, you kind of have to rework the whole area again. And then just roll it till it fits the way you want it to. These panels I cut just slightly oversized compared to the tips were, which were a little bit more oversized, because these are inside the fuselage 90% of the time. I wasn't as worried about getting a slight overlap or even a butt joint. And again, they'll be right there on the parting plane lines as well. There we have that. This little area here, right up against where the slat will go. I'm just going to take the edge of the roller and just get it nice and press down into where it needs to go. And that is essentially that panel. You can take it and see it's kind of lifted up on its own right now, but when you place it down on there, it's nice and tight up against it. So that panel is ready to get glued down into position. And before we put the top one on, we got to make sure we transfer this pivot point to the bottom of that bottom panel, or else it'll just disappear into La La Land, or until you poke around enough and you find it. So yeah, I guess we might as well go ahead and glue that panel on as well. And again, you got to be very careful pulling the tape off the annealed portion of these sheets. So the first one I'm going to put glue on is the actual panel itself, just because it'll really no reason. Pop open our glue here. I'm going to stir it up again, since it's been about an hour since last time I used it. The can specifically says to stir and not shake. Once you get below about half a can with this stuff, you gotta either use it, or it'll start to kind of cure on itself because of the air that's trapped in there. So you gotta work with it really quickly. By the time I get back from Florida, this stuff may not even be usable anymore after that. So that's another reason why I'm working really hard this weekend to try and get these plugs done. Take a bit, we'll just brush it onto the panel. Again, I go a little thicker towards the edges of the panel than I do the center, just because they tend to lift up more than anything else. And especially once we start steel wheeling the panels, the entire plug, before putting the mold release wax and PVA on, you'll actually snag the corners and lift them up. And again, when you're putting the contact adhesive on, you gotta be really gentle in the portion that you annealed, because it will you'll actually flatten it out if you're using an old brush like I am right now. The only reason I'm using an old one is because I'm running out of new ones, and no one here locally has anymore. so I got to order some and make do with what I've got for now. And I'm actually going down around the edges here on the wing root because the panel overlaps a little bit, so it'll actually roll around the edge, or the wing root edge, onto that root rib. And a few weeks, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, someone sent me an email here on YouTube about the F-14. I accidentally deleted that email before I got a chance to read it. So if whoever that was could send me that email again, I promise I won't delete it this time. I'm still looking for somebody to help out with a little bit of electronic box thing for the wing sweep controller, actuators, and some flap servos, and a whole bunch of other cool little things I think would make flying one of these things with all the bells and whistles a little bit easier. So again, if anybody's interested in doing that, let me know, because I just don't have the time to come up, learn how to do some sort of computer chip programming and then make the boards and mold the airplanes and detail these things. Just way too many projects for one person on this thing. So again, if anybody's interested, let me know. I don't expect anybody to want to do it for free. Granted, free is always greatly appreciated, but I'll work something out with whoever wants to where I can pay for it, or do some sort of trade, horse trading. Just let me know. I've got tons of stuff around here. Never even know, I might even give you a sizable discount on a F-14 kit. So, alright, we got the glue put down. Again, this stuff doesn't have to sit very long. Starting back here at the trailing edge, I'm going to get the panel as close against this center wing panel as I can, and in the same position that it was when we were forming it. While it's there, I'm going to go ahead and roll it towards the trailing edge, and I'm going to go ahead and take this leading edge portion as well. And again, we're just going to kind of roll it like when we were making the panel. It doesn't really matter now where you start, just as long as you roll the entire thing. And to get it to come around to wrap around the edge, you want to cut a few little, just kind of little slits here in the edge of it. It just makes folding it around that corner a little bit easier, especially here on the leading edge where it's curved. And then just run the roller about a 15 to 20 degree angle along the edge of the wing root rib to start making the line where it's going to roll over, and then you can just slowly start working little areas and rolling them over, moving the roller to 90 degrees. Then the little area here that pops out, I'm just going to roll it there. I'm going to put a little snip in those areas. Then I'm actually going to take the roller, put it right in the corner of it, and just bend it around, and then just work the little area directly in front of that. What that does, it kind of helps make a little radius in there, so it's just not a straight angle. And there we have one root panel with the whole leading edge and all in one piece. So now we can pull our masking tape off, help get rid of some of that excess adhesive. Then we'll roll around the perimeter of that panel once again just to make sure it's pushed down nice and tight against the glue. Some of those little areas that you have issues getting the tape off, just take a straight razor blade and just kind of scrape it off. You can actually use a straight razor blade to get some of this glue off that's been sitting for a really long time as well. And again, to get the glue, just paper towel with a little dab of acetone on it, and some light scrubbing, and it'll come right off. You don't want to really soaking wet paper towel with it full of acetone. Just want it just lightly damp. If you get it too wet, the acetone actually seep into the joints between each panel. It'll actually soften the glue up, and then the corners will start lifting up again. So you want just a little bit of acetone on it. And for some of the stubborn spots, I've got this little, oh, it's like a green, it's not steel wool, but it's not a green Scotch-Brite pad. I'm not really sure what it is. It's kind of like steel wool, but kind of like the material that a green Scotch-Brite pad is made from. I don't really know what it is. If anybody has any idea what these things are called, let me know, because this is my last one and I have no clue what to get to replace it. But if you get a little piece of glue that won't come off, just take one of these and just run over the whole surface, and then take your paper towel again and kind of work at it. That pad is also the whole thing that we'll use to Scotch-Brite or steel wool the entire airframe before molding. The majority of this wing's already been gone over with that pad. You may be able to tell a difference between here and here as far as how shiny it is. It's kind of hard to tell over a video, but in person it's noticeable. It just kind of helps knock some of the loose stuff off of it, off of the part, and it also even kind of gives it more of a, I guess you could say, more of a metal look to it, even though it's really metal. So well, that's pretty much working with litho on some curves like that. I showed you guys how to do big curves, little curves, funky little fairings like the horizontal stab stuff. There are other little oddball things that, I mean, you can do, the mind's the limit with what you can do with this thing. I mean, if the full scale is made out of metal, you could probably make it out of this stuff too, if you just took the time to make the tooling necessary to do it. That is essentially both wings, or they are both at the same point. Two, possibly three more panels on this wing. I got the one here, and of course the two for here, and then there's the wingtip portion of it, and all of the lithoplate detailing on the actual wings will be done. For the fuselage, get the camera off the tripod here. I went ahead and put these on just a few minutes ago, where the part of the engine exhaust is. This is actually carbon fiber on the full scale airplane. This will be carbon fiber on my model as well. The carbon fiber will extend basically from here all the way to about here, and it's going to be the entire width of the fuselage and all the way around the perimeter. Basically because there you have the vertical stabilizer spar, the horizontal stabs attaches here. You've got all the servos. I mean, this is a pretty important area for keeping it strong. So carbon fiber, a lot of composite bulkheads will be used, and there's also a lot of carbon fiber here along where the wing pivot box is going to be, right down the fuselage. If any of you guys have seen some of the other F-14 kits out there, you've noticed that basically from in front of the wing pivot point all the way across to all the way, just about right here, is just all one giant hatch. I know a lot of guys like that because it makes maintenance super easy. I'm not a big fan of it because, one, it's a giant hatch, and whenever you have a big hatch, you got a spot that doesn't really transfer loads very well unless you engineer the internal structure to do it. So with my fuselage actually having the spine here and integrated with the back of the fuselage, that's going to help carry some of those loads, not to mention all the internal stuff. There's still tons of room. These won't be as large on the model. They'll probably stop right about here and taper back to there. So I mean, you're gonna have enough room to get a turbine in here or an EDF unit. There's tons of room for batteries, fuel tanks, whatnot. So back to the tail section of the fuselage. I bonded up one of the antennas here on the beaver tail. I gotta shape that back up. I've got one panel right here, panel here, that panel, and then there's also the fuel dump tube to go there. I've got to make all that up, clean up the fuselage in general of glue and whatnot, and then I've got two panels, one right here and another one here on the fuselage to make, and then little panels to fix, like that one that's popped loose. And then other than that, the fuselage is done, minus the canopy and windscreen area mentioned beforehand. So if you guys want some more details working with litho plate or whatnot, let me know. I'll get more videos if I need to. I've still got plugs to finish and start. I got to finish the spoiler plugs have to be done. The leading edge slats have to be finished. I've got to start working on the tail cones for the model, but those three plugs I'm not going to worry about doing until I get back from the first trip to Florida. So yeah, that's where we're at. If I decide to make these panels out of litho plate with the framing and everything, I'll make videos showing how I do all that stuff. If not, I will get back to you guys when I get started putting those last couple panels on there at the wing root. So until next time, have a good one.